Hello. Happy live at 12 on Fridays with me, the Barefoot Therapist. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. I want to move this view a little bit because it looks all weird. But I'm happy to be here with you guys. Jump in. I am going to be going live every Friday at 12. This is my intention in connecting and sharing. Every week will be a different topic. If you have a topic that you want to discuss or you want me to discuss, please don't be afraid to drop it in the comments or to DM me. So we're going to have a good live today. Today, we're going to be talking about parents and parental hurt and trauma. I've been scrolling and seeing so many videos about harms committed by parents on their adult children that's far started in childhood. And you have so many of these parents saying and doing such hurtful things that seem like they're just a continuation of how they treated their child in childhood, and it's just an extension of that. Do I think it comes down to hurt people, and capacity and all of that? Yes, but we as parents, I'm a parent, and I have wonderful parents, are responsible for the well-being of our children in the way that we both contribute to it, impact it, and influence it. We are responsible for that. When our children become of age, that doesn't no longer make you their parent. You're still their parent. That's still your child. They are an adult. They have a level of responsibility in their wellness and well-being, yes. But that doesn't give you license to mistreat them. That doesn't give you license to hurt or harm them because you have been hurt or harmed. That our children are not responsible for our joy and our happiness. They're just not. And I know it sucks sometimes for some because it's like, well, this is the way my parents treated me, or this is the way I was treated. But that doesn't justify you hurting your children because that was the way you were treated. In fact, you would think that that gives you even more perspective to not project that onto the child that you now have, that you can change things for and you can change the experience for. But more often than not, we replay the things that hurt us most. We replay the things and do the very things that we said, I would never, when I grow up and if I ever have kids, I would never do that. I would never do that to my kids. And then in fact, do the exact thing. Become the exact thing because it's way too comforting. It's way too natural. It's way too regular for us to become the very thing that we've experienced. It actually is the thing that we know best. And this is not about it being right, wrong, or indifferent. That's just the nature and nurture experience. That's the thing that we became accustomed to. So then we become accustomed to doing, unless we intentionally decide that we're not going to do that. That is the difference. Intentionally deciding not to yell or scream, or I don't know how many of y'all got spankings or whoopings. I got whoopings. I got whoopings with belts. All right. I'm not whooping my kids with belts. I've decided that's just not what I'm doing. I had to come to a place where I said, you know what? If this is what it's going to require of me as a parent, I'm going to have to make some serious changes. That's just not what I want. I knew I grew up more afraid to talk, afraid to share, afraid because I didn't want that level of discipline. And I will also say the discipline, the consequences, the parameters and boundaries my parents had for me also contributed to my success. Both things have to be true. Both things have to be true. That it wasn't all good and it wasn't all bad. That I am who I am not just because of the good things, that I am also who I am because some of their failures, because of some of their mishaps, because of some of their choices, even though there may be things I don't necessarily agree with or that hurt me, I can't separate what things would have been without them either. So it is being able to consider how all things work in our best good and to get us where we need to go, good, bad, or indifferent. And I'm not saying abuse is justified in any way, shape, or form. I am simply saying parental harm and trauma carry, and they usually carry generationally. They don't just stop at one person typically. They typically are carried over and over, and especially for Black folks, we are still experiencing generational trauma from slavery and oppression that we still experience, racism and white privilege and all the things. Like, we're still experiencing those things. Even now, we're still experiencing those things even now. So we also have to be mindful on how generational trauma is bigger than just the things our parents did to us. We're talking about a lineage of hurt and harm that a people felt powerless and helpless to control and change. They did, and have, obviously we are here because of our ancestors. However, we also have to acknowledge that that still has remnants even on us currently, how we show up, how we communicate, how we connect with each other, how we decide to or not to be vulnerable. So it is one of those things where just being mindful of how things impact us and have impacted our parents also goes into the pot. You know, I think of it like it's gumbo. You gonna bring a whole lot of things to eventually make something real fucking good. But in the beginning, that shit do not smell good, and you really questioning the process because everything is undone and everything is chaotic, and it's so many different things that go into this one pot to make something beautiful and delicious. So when we are going into having the discussion about parental trauma, this is not about letting your parents off the fucking hook. It's not about that. It's not about not letting them be accountable for their things. They are responsible for their things. That full stop there. They're responsible for their things. And how are we carrying those things into our decisions, our relationships with our children, how we treat ourselves, how we treat others? How are we now carrying those things? That's what we're responsible for. They're responsible for what they did. We are responsible for what we're doing. Two different things. I can't be at this big age still pointing fingers at my mom. That's not going to get me anywhere. It hasn't gotten me anywhere. As wonderful as my parents were, they were people. They were imperfect. There were things I had to resolve on my own so I could be the best version of myself for me and for my children, so they can have less of what I had, so they can have less. Not that I'm perfect at all. I apologize often, but I also think that is the thing that I give my kids because I've done the work, is I'm not afraid to apologize to them. I'm not afraid to be accountable for being a person and making mistakes and making poor decisions. I'm not afraid to do that. When you can be accountable, be responsible, have a level of humility with your children, it changes the relationship. It builds trust when they know you can be honest, that you're not looking at, there's this meme that I saw just yesterday. It's not that this person did anything new. It's been around. But this meme where this creator is like, this is what my mom says, where she's sitting there like, I never spanked you. Or no, the kid is like, Mom, you spanked me so much as a kid. And the mom is like, no, I didn't. I never spanked you. And they're like, what? Are we in the Twilight Zone? What are we talking about? But that level of denial is so triggering for most. And again, I understand that experience of like, I know I'm not tripping. I know I was here. I know what my experience was. Why are we doing this? Why is your recollection of how I was treated so different than mine? Cognitive dissonance is very much a thing. When people are unable to reconcile their behavior, they will distance themselves from it so much so that it is compartmentalized. And for some, it's a flat out lie. And for some, they quite literally don't recall it. Because the way that they've played back in their mind, the version of the parent that they see themselves as, the person they wanted to be, is different than the version you got. Now, again, that takes a level of work and accountability to come to a place of humility and courage and bravery to own the things that you can't change and that hurt the people you love. That requires a level of bravery because you cannot change it. Even if mom at this moment said, sorry, damn, you right, I did whoop your ass. Damn, you right. I mean, we laughing about it, but I really like whooped your ass when you was little. I felt like that was a thing I had to do. A simple apology, really. Listen, y'all got to know, and this is for parents out there, grandparents out there, oftentimes a bit of accountability goes a long way. A bit of validation and reassurance goes a long way. A bit of not trying to make people feel like they fucking crazy for recalling shit that you actually did goes a long way. A bit of humility goes a long way. You may not even agree, but the fact that it is something they recall that hurt them that by way of you, it is something that you can still validate them, that you understand, you hear them. You don't have, it's not about whether you agree or not. It's less about whether you agree and more about validating that this person is hurt by something you did and that you can provide them a level of love and reassurance without being a bad person. Like oftentimes I find that parents struggle with taking accountability for things because they are already beating themselves up about how good or bad of a parent they are, instead of owning that as a parent, we are imperfect and we're not always going to get it right. But that doesn't mean you're a bad person. That doesn't mean you're a bad parent. That just means you are a person and you fuck up sometimes. And we just got to be okay with that. And two things can be true. You know, I'm going to use an example of like with my daughter. I can be intense. And my daughter was saying, Mom, you raised your voice. You're right. I am sorry for raising my voice. You did not deserve for me to talk to you like that. Full stop. I also want to let you know that this is a two-way street. I asked you 5 times to do the same thing in a kind tone, in a caring tone, in a low tone. At some point, you are also then responsible for what consequence comes with you not wanting to listen. 2 things here are true, not just one. So even being willing to have those hard conversations with your children can change a lot of things. And leaving the space open to have hard conversations is invaluable. They need that. That is how they learn. That's how you build intimacy and safety and trust in your relationships with your children, when you can have hard conversations and own your bullshit. And also say, hey, look, this is what I need from you. I'm 100% accountable for the shit I did. Full stop. And this is what I need from you. Because you're right. I could have said that different. Full stop. You're no if, ands, or buts about it. I apologize for the way that I said that. Okay? I need for you to listen when I ask you to do something the first time. Please do not put me in a position to have to keep repeating myself. What would you expect me to do when I've asked you multiple times? Because at some point, a consequence will ensue. That's it. So again, two things can be true, but it does not mean because I raised my voice, I'm a fucked up parent. I'm a damn good parent, and I fuck up on a regular basis. I apologize a lot. I apologize a lot. I just see that as part of my responsibility. And not only that, I want to model for my children the value in accountability, validation, and reassurance. I want them to know that it doesn't make you any less of a human being because you take responsibility for the shit you do. In fact, it makes you inevitably powerful when you can step into the things that you say and do, own them, and be accountable for them, and connect anyway, even through hardship, even through challenging times. That's what is required of relationships, not perfection. Not perfection, but modeling for them humility, modeling for them accountability, modeling for them love, reassurance, validation, modeling those things for them. Because they're all necessary. Respect. They deserve respect too. Yes, they're kids and they deserve respect. Because listen, if we don't give them respect at home, they're going to let other people not give them respect when they're not home. They're going to think that's the standard of care, and it's not. The standard of care is not disrespect. But if I am teaching you at home that should be the normal standard of care, you're not going to understand why it's invaluable for you to demand respect from other people. You're not even going to understand what that means. But we model that first at home. How are we treating them? How are we showing up? How are we giving of ourselves? How are we humbling ourselves? How are we holding ourselves as adults accountable for the bullshit we do? How are we honoring their feelings and their interpretation of things, even if we don't agree? And then being clear that it's not always about us. It's not always about us. And we are preparing these beautiful beings to go out in the world with people who don't give a fuck about them. People who are going to care less about their feelings. People who are going to care less about being accountable. People who will lie to their face. They have to have both a level of integrity to show up in spaces where it may not be the norm, but also hold themselves to a standard that's necessary. That they will surround themselves and build relationships with people who have humility, who are accountable, who are thoughtful, who are considerate, who are respectful of you and themselves, who love themselves and they love you, and those two things can coexist. It was something I heard someone say that I absolutely agree with, and they said it is dangerous to be in connection or relationship with someone who doesn't love themselves, because if they don't love them, it's up for you. That is my interpretation. It's up for you. Anything can go. Anything can go. If the standard for me is low, the standard of what I can give you and offer is just as low, if not lower. And it may appear as if, oh my gosh, they're loving me and they don't, necessarily do all these things for themselves. That is not sustainable. Because if it was, they would be able to sustain loving themselves. And if they haven't figured that out, it is not sustainable for them to love you in a way that they can't figure out how to sustain for themselves. That doesn't even make sense. But the walk away, I hope from today is you are valuable even when you make mistakes. You are actually more trustworthy when you can own those mistakes and own those poor decisions. I just posted last night on my Substack. If you guys are not subscribed to my Substack, please do. I just posted last night about moral injury. I don't want to describe it all here. It's a whole, but I did a whole essay on moral injury and how, if we don't forgive ourselves for the decisions we made in positions that we did our best, even though it went against our moral standards, we will start repeating this pattern and cycle of harm because our standard of care is so low for ourselves. But if you get a chance to read the Substack, it is fantastic. I love the conversation around moral injury. Maybe I'll do a live about moral injury. I think it's really important to talk about because I find often you have people who are struggling with not necessarily forgiving others, but forgiving themselves. And so the way that they move is indicative of that. Not necessarily, again, them forgiving other people, but them forgiving themselves. So if you like the live today, please like and share. Please follow my YouTube. I will be going live at 12 on YouTube. I'm starting it on multiple platforms because I need to do more marketing around it. But I will consistently go live at 12 on YouTube every Friday. If you have topics you want me to discuss, please, message me and let me know what topics you want me to cover. But I'll be covering a different topic every single Friday. Again, I hope you guys have a beautiful weekend. Subscribe to my Substack. If you haven't got your slot for the retreat, please do. Check the link in my bio. I'll see y'all soon. Bye-bye.